Well, I think we've got to judge the fact that the new Spanish government has been in place for 9 or 10 days. The new Spanish foreign minister has been in office for 5 days. And I think we've seen a remarkable change in the approach from what we saw in October, where there was a much more belligerent tone. Here we've seen a neutral tone, which takes us back to the historic position that Spain has been putting now for so many decades, but none of the additional belligerence that we saw in some of the Margallo years.
In terms of the specifics, you've highlighted that there's been no reference to Brexit in this speech. There's also been no mention of the trilateral forum, but there was a reference to the joint sovereignty proposal, which they described as being still on the table.
Well, I think we've seen also a reference to dialogue. We've seen a reference to, of course, the 1984 Brussels process, which is born in the UN and is one of the things that Spain uses as a hook on which to hang its claim and how it wants to see Gibraltar finally decolonized. But this is the classic exposition of the case that you might have heard in the Spanish diplomats' school in the foreign ministry. We haven't heard any of the much more colorful, much more belligerent language attacking Gibraltar, talking about illicit markets, etc., which we have seen in the past and which we would have been ready to reply to if it had been deployed. In fact, one of the things I've wanted to do is to put on the record of the UN our response to some of the things that were said in October, although I haven't wanted to dwell on it today.
In terms of Gibraltar's stance today, also extending the olive branch or the hand of friendship with references to the trilateral forum, of course, and indeed the airport in the context of Brexit and the Cortes agreement. Are you hopeful that this olive branch will be taken up?
Well, you know that successive governments of Gibraltar have been referring to the Forum for Dialogue. Even at the worst moments under Señor Margallo, we continued to refer to it, and the United Kingdom in its responses at the United Nations has continued to say that it strongly supports the Forum for Dialogue, the Trilateral Forum for Dialogue. So there's nothing new there. But with a new government in Spain, it is absolutely right that we say that we stretch out the hand of friendship for cooperation, for dialogue, to work together, but at the same time never resiling from our cast iron position on sovereignty. So I've said both things because both can go hand in hand together. They are not mutually exclusive, and it's the line that we will be pursuing in future contacts as we see how our relationship with the new government of Spain can develop.
In previous years, last year for example, you said the committee had failed in its sacred mission to protect the peoples of non-self-governing territories. This time you've asked for a reaction to the referendum and reiterated your call for a visit. Is it this somewhat less critical tone due to the new chairmanship?
Well, there was a new chairman and we have to give him an opportunity to respond. We have to pose our question again, as we do. Remember that it was Joe Bossano and me that brought the Constitution to the committee in 2006 after it was chosen by the people of Gibraltar to ask the committee for a response. We gave it to the Secretary General and to the chairman of the committee to tell us whether or not, in the United Nations' eyes, this Constitution allows us to say that we have reached the maximum possible level of self-government short of independence. This is the committee that determines that and recommends, therefore, decolonization and delisting to the fourth committee. So it's absolutely right that we should ask the new chairman of this committee that under his chairmanship we should have a response and that we should have visiting missions to Gibraltar. Let's see what the response is. I can guarantee you that I will be no softer on a new chairman than I have been on previous chairman if we get no response.